No doubt. All right, so we are rolling through the program, and I wanted to mention this. We talk a lot about audience and which sports are growing and which sports are declining. And I went and did on yesterday afternoon, I went and did Candace Owens' show. Candace Owens is a very popular political commentator, social commentator, and she was doing a sports-focused version of her show. It's part of the Daily Wire network, and I was one of her guests. And she was talking about how as a girl growing up, she loved watching Michael Jordan back in 1998 with the Chicago Bulls and how her entire family was watching and how connective she felt to sports fans everywhere over the Jordan-era Bulls. And that's part of the discussion that she and I had yesterday afternoon. And I thought it was interesting because that's certainly a feeling that I believe most sports fans had and still have if you consider how many people watched the Michael Jordan 1990s era Chicago Bulls documentary that ESPN put on last May at the height of much of the pandemic when people were desperate to be able to watch something. The Last Dance came on. What was it, Dub? Like 3 straight Sundays, I think it was. Episode 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6. I feel like it was 3 straight Sundays. If I'm getting that wrong in May, you guys can tweet me and let me know. But it was wildly popular. So popular, in fact, that almost more people watched a documentary about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls in the 1990s than watched the NBA Finals with LeBron James and the Lakers against the Heat in 2020. Think about that for a minute. People liked the Jordan-era Bulls so much more than they liked LeBron that they were more interested in watching a documentary on ESPN about a team that was 20-plus years ago they were playing than they were interested in actually watching LeBron James and the Lakers play against the Heat in real time on ABC. And a lot of people out there tried to defend the NBA and say, well, this was just a different season, the fact that only 7 million people on average were watching. And the numbers came out for Gonzaga-Baylor. Just recently, the national championship game that was played late Monday night, Baylor obviously won the championship. And I was blown away by them, and I'm probably the only person who has pointed out the storyline here. 17 million people, just about, watched Gonzaga against Baylor. That's 2 private schools. It's not like it was Duke and Kentucky. It's not like it was UNC against Kansas. 2 private schools that most sports fans don't really have a strong rooting interest for. And the game wasn't remotely close. And yet, that many people actually watched the NCAA title game. 17 million. 10 million more people in this country watched a college basketball national title game than watched any of the 6 NBA Finals games. Think about that for a minute. People like basketball. They crave it. They love the sport. The NBA, instead of giving them a reason to love it, instead of embracing the Jordan era, they are actually turning basketball fans away with all of their woke politics and their lecturing. And those same fans are so desperate for basketball that they are watching the NCAA tournament, even a matchup between 2 schools that doesn't provoke a lot of strong reaction, more so than they're watching the NBA Finals. Now, I want you to think about this for a minute. And I was thinking about this because I did Candace Owens' show, and we were talking about it on Wednesday afternoon. I went back and I looked it up after seeing the opening to her show. 37 million people watched Game 6 of the Chicago Bulls against the Jazz in 1998. That is the most people to ever watch any basketball game in the history of the United States of America. 37 million people. 7 million people watched LeBron James and the Lakers play against the Heat Game 6 in 2020. Think about that for a minute now. From 37 million viewers to 7 million viewers. That's a decline of 30 million in viewership. At the same time, guys and girls, that the United States population has increased by 50 million people. Think about that for a minute. There are now 50 million more people who live in the United States of America now in 2020, 2021 than lived in the United States of America in 1998. So the NBA is slicing and dicing their audience to such a significant factor that even with 50 million more people who could be consuming their product, they have actually ended up with 30 million fewer people actually watching. And college basketball has not seen that same collapse. Now, some people out there are going to say, well, there's a lot less people who watch television now. Anytime you say that some leagues are struggling, first guy who hops into Twitter says, well, a lot less people watch TV now. Well, the NBA Finals are available on ABC. It's free. But there aren't a lot less people watching the NFL now than were watching the NFL in 1998. In fact, the number of viewers of NFL games has gone up substantially since 1998. A lot of woke idiots on ESPN in particular, they try to argue, oh, the NBA is more popular than the NFL. It's a record scratch, dumbest argument of all time moment. The NBA was far closer to catching the NFL in 1998 than it is in 2020 or 2021. The NFL is dunking all balls in the face style on the NBA, hanging on the rim, and the same thing is happening with college basketball against the NBA. Why? Because Michael Jordan sold an era that everybody is included. I saw this and thought about it, and I probably need to do a full-on examination of this. But I saw the other day, Shaq bought did you guys see this story? Shaq bought an engagement ring for a random dude that was buying an engagement ring for his fiance. He just happened to be in a jewelry store, and Shaq saw this guy buying a ring, and he's super rich, and he was like, you know what? I'm just going to do something nice. I'm going to buy this ring for this guy. And it got me thinking about the era of the 90s and the way those athletes carried themselves. Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird in the 80s, Magic Johnson. They were selling the idea as entertainers that they wanted you to come watch them play basketball, that basketball was a great sport and that everybody should love it. The calling card of that era of the NBA, for those of you who are old enough to remember it, was what? NBA action is fantastic. And they had all the different celebrities doing advertisements about how much they loved going to NBA games. And all of the stars did their best to put on the best possible show in order for everybody to come there to be entertained. And now think about what happens in the NBA. You can spend a lot of money on a ticket when you can actually get in post-COVID, and you can show up. Maybe you only get to go to one game, and the best player can be sitting out because he just doesn't want to play. Not because he's hurt, just because he's managing the load of the season. How many NBA guys understand that the reason they are making the salary they are now is because of all the incredible outreach that Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley and all of that era, Karl Malone, John Stockton, all that those guys did to build the league, they are burning all the equity that has been stacked up in the NBA, and you can see it in the eyeballs that are turning off the league. 17 million people watched Gonzaga Baylor. There are a lot of people out there who still love basketball. 7 million watched Lakers Heat. Why is that? Because the NBA has told a huge percentage of its fan base, we don't want you, which is the worst thing any business could ever do. And I think the NBA is just starting to reap what they have sowed. The league has peaked. It is on a major downward trajectory, and they need to recalibrate their entire business model, and they need to do it fast while that business still exists.